If your hamstrings are always tight, no matter how much you stretch them, I need you to stop. Because tight hamstrings might not actually be your problem. My name's Dr. Jared, and if you were to come into my physical therapy clinic and say, hey, my hamstrings are always tight, my response wouldn't be, let's jump into these stretches. My response would be, why? Let's figure out why those hamstrings are tight. Because tightness in this area is a symptom of a different problem. And if we can figure out the cause of that tightness, you're actually going to see a lot more progress and a lot more improvement than just stretching alone. And so that's what I want to share with you in this video. I'm going to share two of the main causes of tightness in your hamstring and give you some ideas of how you can fix those, but then also share some simple exercises that are going to help your hamstrings to move and feel better than they ever have. Cause number one of your hamstring tightness happens if your lower back looks like this. We call this position anterior pelvic tilt, and this is why it's a problem. Your hamstrings actually originate right up here on your pelvis. They cross your hip joint, they go down the back of your leg and cross your knee joint to insert into your lower leg. If you have this anterior tilt posture, that's actually going to raise that insertion point on your hamstrings. The back part of your pelvis right here comes up a little higher. And you can see how that would increase tension on your hamstrings. It would create a constant tug or a constant pull in that muscle. You can also see why no amount of stretching is going to help your hamstrings to feel better if it's constantly tight. So the treatment here that I recommend would be to correct that anterior pelvic tilt posture to reset your pelvis and to minimize the tug on those hamstring muscles. Now, the exercises and the treatment for that is a little beyond the scope of this video, but if you're interested, I want you to check out this Tone and Tighten video about correcting that pelvic tilt. I've got it linked in the description below. I will also link it at the end of this video. Cause number two of tight hamstring muscles is actually a weakness in your glute muscles. Because your hamstrings cross your hip joint, they can actually serve to extend your hip, but that's not their primary job. That's the primary job of your gluteus maximus muscle. If that muscle is weak, or if it's not firing correctly or serving its proper function, your hamstrings can take over as that hip extensor. They become overworked, they become tired, they become achy, they become tight, and that's when you start to feel it. And so what do we do about it? Well, we need to strengthen the glutes to kind of wake them up so that they perform their proper function again. And so if we can do some exercises to strengthen and wake up your glutes, it can turn your hamstrings off and help you to feel a lot better. My three favorite exercises to do that at home are going to be a bridge, simply where you lie down on your back with your knees bent, contract your glutes to lift your pelvis, and perform that 15 to 20 times for 3 sets. If that's easy, progress that as soon as you can into a single leg version where now we're just kicking one leg straight and performing a similar motion. It just makes the exercise a little more difficult. 3 sets of about 10 to 15 reps is my recommendation there. And then a single leg deadlift where we're standing on one leg, we hinge forward at the hip, keeping the back nice and straight in a neutral position, and then use the glute muscle to pull back up into an upright posture. This is a great exercise because we're also passively stretching the hamstring as we perform it as well. 3 sets of about 10 reps on each side is what I recommend. Now, while you're working on the cause of those tight hamstrings, that doesn't mean that you have to suffer with hamstring tightness. What I want to do now is show you a few of my favorite exercises to minimize tension in your hamstrings so that you can feel better. The first thing I like to do is loosen up those hamstrings with some form of massage or mobilization. My personal favorite way to do that is with a foam roller, and I like this because it's really easy, it's really convenient, especially if you have pain or problems in both hamstrings. You can do it just like this, or if you want to focus your efforts just on one side, we can cross the leg over, but what we want to do is get all the way from the hip all the way to the back of the knee, and I usually just spend 2 to 3 minutes doing that. Now, if you don't have a foam roller or want to do this mobilization in a little more comfortable position, seated in a chair with a tennis ball is a good way to do it. What you can do is put that tennis ball underneath that hamstring muscle, and then what you're going to do is kind of find the area where you feel a knot, or maybe it's increased tension. It might be some increased tenderness as you go kind of up and down a little bit. Once you find one of those spots, you can, with your hands, apply a little bit of overpressure to it. The more you lean into it, the more tender it becomes, but the more effective it should be at releasing that trigger point. And then finally, the last thing that I like to show people on this is you can actually mobilize that muscle while applying this trigger point release. Once you find that tender spot, slowly extend your leg and you're gonna feel it move a little bit under your hamstring. I've got this look on my face because that's actually a really tight spot on me right now. We can extend the leg, we can mobilize that spot, and then we can come right back just like this. And on this, typically what I recommend is, 5 or 10 extensions, and then you can mobilize, or excuse me, you can move that tennis ball to a little bit different spot on your hamstring, find another one of those spots, spend 2 to 3 minutes just mobilizing and loosening up the hamstring just like this. And finally, let's stretch out those tight hamstrings. These are 3 of my favorite exercises to do that. But before we jump into those, have you had a chance to check out Tone & Tighten's membership program yet? This is where you can go to support the channel, get bonus content from me. There's some other cool stuff with that. Click join down below if you want to learn more about it. Also, if you have gotten some benefit from this video, hit the thumbs up button, and thank you so much for your support there. Okay, when I say hamstring stretches, for most of us, our minds go to the good old sit and reach test right here to stretch out the hamstrings. And if you look at me as I do this, you think, holy cow, Jared, you are incredibly flexible. I can go all the way to here. The reason why is because I'm actually very mobile in my lower back. When I reach out to right here, I feel that a lot more in my spine than I do in my hamstrings. So let me give you a better version of that. What we're gonna do is just drop one leg off of the side of a bed or a couch, or even like the kitchen table is a good place to do this one. And what that's going to do is keep my spine in a more neutral position. I can't round my back when my leg is down on the ground. It's holding my pelvis in a better spot. In this position, I want you to sit up nice and tall. I want you to reach forward, and then rather than reach down towards your toe, I want you to just reach towards the wall in front of you until you get a good stretch in your hamstring. And you can see that I'm actually going a lot shorter. I'm not going as far as I did, but that's locked in right in that hamstring muscle is where I'm feeling that 100%. I would hold that for about 20 seconds and then repeat it 3 times on both sides. If you want a standing version of a hamstring stretch, I like to come up to a stair or a curb, and what we can do here is just kick the heel up onto that elevated surface, and now the same rule applies. I want you to keep your back nice and straight. We're not going to round forward and lunge, reach here towards the toes. We're going to keep the back in a neutral position and then lean forward towards the wall in front of you. Try to keep your chest up and your shoulders back. And what you'll feel here is just a good deep stretch right behind the leg, right in that hamstring. I want you to hold that in a comfortable position for about 20 seconds and repeat it 3 times. Which brings us to my personal favorite way to stretch the hamstrings. We're gonna take a little more dynamic approach to it. This one is kind of a magical stretch because it is so effective. What I want you to do first is stand and hinge at your hips and just reach down towards your toes as low as you can. It's just a fun way to kind of see what you're capable of before we start this stretch. Now here on the ground, I've got a rolled up towel. You can also use a book. You can use something. I just want your toes, or I just want the surface to be a couple inches difference. And so I'm gonna start with my toes elevated. So I've got my toes up on the towel right now, or up on the book, whatever surface it is that you're using. Keep your back in a nice neutral position. Hinge forward at your hips until we get to the end point of your range of motion. Hang out there for 1 or 2 seconds and then come right back up. And what I want you to do is actually repeat that 10 times. Take it down to where it's a comfortable stretch, hold it for 1 to 2 seconds, and then come right back up out of it. After you perform 10 reps there, I want you to step so that now my heels are on that elevated surface. So now heels are above my toes. And then we're gonna repeat the same thing. I'm gonna drop down and I'm gonna hold for 1 or 2 seconds at the bottom of that range of motion, and then I'm going to repeat that for 10 repetitions. I've only done a couple of reps here, and already you can see what that did to my range of motion. It's actually a really cool thing to do. I would recommend just once a day on that one. I hope these help your hamstrings to feel amazing, and thank you so much for watching.